make sure that your bases are covered, your living expenses are covered before you make any big jumps. I mean, I am the person that says go big, but I'm also logical in that sense. Before you make that path change, do it in tandem with your W-2 job. It's okay to do both. If you use the same passion that you used and you really truly love real estate, you're gonna hit home runs all the time.
Welcome everyone to the Road Less Traveled Show. This is a show about people that were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we were so pleased to have Mike Smith with us. Mike, welcome.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, guys. Truly appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mike. Yeah, thank you again for being on the Road Less Traveled Show. To start with, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how long you were in that line of work?
Surely. So I'm really in the marketing game. So spent a lot of time both from a digital marketing, whereas it's more design, and then more from an outreach perspective, and then creating inbound funnels. That on top of doing fitness for so long. I did fitness for almost 15 years where I trained people and got them motivated and got them to their goals very quickly, or at least tried to. You know how that goes. And then also I was in the sales, predominantly sales. I used to sell. I was an appointment setter for Kirby vacuums. If you've ever seen one of those, they are essentially the Mercedes-Benz of vacuum cleaners, and they have a lifetime warranty. So buying it one time, you'll have a vacuum cleaner for life.
Are they still around?
Yeah. A vacuum cleaner for some reason all of a sudden.
Are they still around? I mean, I remember having a Kirby vacuum way back when I was a kid, but, I just haven't seen them,
My grandma used to have one. It used to look like a Cadillac. It was like that copper tone, color with the bag. And if she was still alive today, rest in peace, she would still be using it. That's the good news.
Yeah. Very cool. Something to be said for longevity and built to last that just does not happen anymore. I mean, anytime I buy a whatever, whether it be a little portable thing or whatever, it just freaking lasts maybe 2 years and it's throwaway. It's just very frustrating. So, yeah.
Don't make them like they used to.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mike, what do you, after you, and it sounds like it was a great setup for what we know you've got into now, but if you want to tell the listeners what you've transitioned into currently with all the marketing background, sounds like it's a great background to be doing what you're currently doing.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously I do real estate, pretty much everything above the line real estate, whether it's, wholesaling, finding deals, putting transactions together, also in the capacity of a realtor, representing people, making sure they get the highest and best. And then, scaling my own personal portfolio, putting, putting money, other people's money to work, trying to get into bigger transactions, trying to get a little bit more passive, which is, it's very difficult to get passive in real estate to some degree if you're still acting in the capacity of a partner. But yeah, pretty much everything above the line.
Okay, excellent. And have you had to modify your approach here in the last couple of years as the market's changed, from more wholesaling, more fix and flips, or one way or the other?
Great question. So transactional tends to be transactional keeps the light on, if that makes sense for the business model, and it also enables me to cherry pick deals as they come in. Mm-hmm. So I would say that the wholesaling kind of always takes a precedent because without the leads coming in, you don't have a business.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Mike, can you mention a little bit about the geography of what you're talking about in terms of where you've operated and things like that?
Yeah, so I'm originally from New Jersey. I grew up in Jersey and PA, and I went to college at Penn State, and then I made a couple life changes and moved around the country a little bit, but eventually ended up back in Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia, I came of age essentially right after the crash. Mm-hmm. And if you know Philadelphia at all, you'll know that it went through a major resurgence after the crash. Right. So that's kind of where I made my bones, more or less. And that's where I focus on. And I have the biggest buyers list and relationships at this point. But I did venture out and tried to find other markets that are similar, both in their resurgence, median income and stability within that specific market, such as Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and then a little bit in Florida. And then we were doing some deals down in North Carolina. where I reside now.
It's interesting because a lot of people have a stigma about the Rust Belt, or sort of like these cold states, where the temperatures are colder, that, it's just not good places to live. And that's changed. I think a lot of it has changed. And, and again, maybe part of the attraction is that there are still some real estate prices that are very affordable. Maybe even the 2% rule might even apply in some cases, and things like that. We just don't see that anywhere in the Southeast, pretty much. But again, there might still be some places like those markets you mentioned to still see some deals. So very cool.
Yeah,
very cool. So, Mike, as you look back, perhaps in your sales career and your marketing career, things like that, is there a funny story you can share? Something that happened to you along the way?
Yeah, this is I have so many stories, but to pick out just one, it's very difficult. It's hard to just pick out one, man. It's kind of like asking me, like, when you go to school, it's like pick out, like one person is very hard, or pick out the last deal you did. It's just very hard.
Mm-hmm.
My short-term memory might be shot too, honestly.
A little too much partying at Penn State.
A little bit too much, yeah.
They don't call it Happy Valley for nothing, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, what was the deciding factor that made you want to leave, like, the marketing? And you sound like you had a lot of traction in that, and you obviously had that pitch down for the Kirby vacuum cleaners already. So what was it made you want to transition into the real estate side of it?
It was actually very simple. So I had made a transition just in general. So I have to back up a little bit. So I actually went to school. After I went to Penn State, I used to work at the radio station there. So I used to be a radio host and a DJ and all that fun stuff. And I really gravitated towards the music aspect of it and sharing stories and things of that nature. So I wanted to focus more on that. So I decided to go to a school that specialized in that. And that was Full Sail University down in Orlando. Mm-hmm. So I kind of shifted gears first, did that, excelled at that, worked at some pretty prominent studios down there and in New York. And I realized that, I'm starting, you basically have to work for free in that industry initially, right? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of late nights. It's a lot of you're on call, and the lifestyle was just, it doesn't really allow for you to have a family. You're pretty much just at the service of your client, whoever that may be at that time. And although it is fun, you get to meet a lot of stars and, X, Y, and Z, and there's opportunities there. But for me personally, I just kind of got burnt out. Mm-hmm. But in doing that, I found a way to, I actually got more into my health and fitness. So I made that transition and began to help people in that direction. And at that time, I came back to Philadelphia, and I moved into one of those neighborhoods that I said had a great resurgence, which was Fishtown, which was like a North Philadelphia. But it was still pretty rough. There was still lots of crime. There was still lots of decay, a lot of poverty. But you could kind of see where the line was changing, the emerging market line, I call it. Mm-hmm. So by buying a house there, and this was my first house, I got married, had a kid, and bought my first house in 1 year. So it was pretty steep hill there to climb.
That was my first year of marriage also. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
exactly.
So, and at that time I was running a gym and realizing that, like, hey, all this stuff is happening around me. Like, people are, rehabbing these houses, and the price points are so inexpensive. I was like, how do I get into this? And I just so happened to buy a house that was next to 3 vacant lots in this neighborhood. And I was thinking, like, all right, well, how do I make this happen here? Like, I know that these lots have value. So, and they were owned by the city at that time. And at that time specifically, the city was offering what they call a side yard program. So if your property was adjacent to a lot that they owned, you could purchase this lot for $1.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I was able to pick up 2 of those. And then, it comes with some stipulations, like there's a money mortgage associated with it. So you can't sell it within a certain amount of time, X, Y, and Z. But that was my first, the house was my first kind of flip, because I had to do a 203K on the house itself. But then from like, a development or investment perspective outside of that, my first deal was actually those lots. Mm-hmm. And later down the line, I joint ventured with an individual. Well, first, the first one I wholesaled. That's how I learned about wholesaling, or not necessarily wholesaling. I I put it out there and a wholesaler grabbed it up and sold it. And he made like, he made like 15 grand. I was like, dude, how'd you make 15 grand on that? He's like, let me show you.
Nice.
Yeah. So then the other one I JV'd with a GC, and we put up my first house. So I was able to kind of be in the mix, but not necessarily have the responsibility of actually the day to day.
Right.
Okay.
So that's how I got it.
Very cool. Yeah. So actually, I did some college radio too, and actually, the thing that probably told me not to keep that as a career was the fact that number one, the college antenna to broadcast interfered with the town, literally 3 miles away, where you could hear like the radio coming through people's outlets. I mean, literally your electrical outlet in the wall. You could hear the speaker, so they had to take the tower down, put it on a cable, which pretty much meant there was no audience at all, except for the bored student that was in between classes that happened to put the TV on for noise. So I'm like, I had fun, but not a career. So
kind of funny. You're a forced audience. Everybody has to listen.
Yeah, everybody had to listen, right? One of the things I loved about college radio was that they had it wasn't, how most radio stations, they have one predominant genre of music. Mm-hmm. And so you know what to expect. Whereas college radio, it scans the spectrum. So you might have country at this time, you might have oldies one. So that's why I enjoyed it so much, because you could get, and I'm a lover of music, all music. So that's why I enjoyed it so much, was I got the exposure to all of those different genres. And it was a great time. I mean, that's why today I still produce music, and I'm trying to start a podcast. It's going okay, but we'll see how it shakes out.
All right, good. So Mike, as you think about, again, really shifting into the real estate side, and eventually, obviously, it's evident that you essentially kind of sunset your other stuff and really focused on this. But initially, again, you had some learning to do. You didn't know what wholesaling was. You talked about that. You figured out how to deal with that and resolve that. But what are some other obstacles that you can mention that you had to overcome?
I guess from time is always an obstacle, because you want to, like I said, I got into it when I had a family. So, making sure you balance out your time, making sure you're taking care of your health, just, I guess, one of the main things that I had to learn was how to schedule, how to set time aside. That was one of the biggest challenges that I had faced. And even though it seemed small, and as I grew and got bigger, it's like what calls to take and what's a priority, how to prioritize things. And that's still a challenge today. I mean, I'm better at it, but I'd say that's probably the biggest hurdle. But as far as like a practical, as it relates to real estate, I'd say it's all hard. It's all a challenge. But I would say one of the things is underwriting, learning how to evaluate a deal, like how to know if you have a deal or not. Because every time you step into a new market, you basically have to reevaluate everything. I mean, the numbers look good, but you don't know if people are trying to put you together. Sometimes brokers will try to put you together, or the seller's trying to put you together. So that has definitely been, one of the things is knowing where to get the information, because sometimes if it's a good deal, there's definitely something that, it needs fixing. Because if it was a good deal, why are they selling it? Right.
That's interesting. Actually, through all of our conversations on this show, I don't think we've ever had anybody mention time management really as kind of an obstacle to overcome. But you're absolutely right. It is a time management thing. I mean, there is, you do have to kind of figure out how to balance, whether you're still doing your W-2 job or whether you're in this real estate field. And again, not all of our guests are real estate people, but many are. But the point is that, you're right. Time management is super important, and trying to figure out how to, turn it off at the right time so that you don't wind up, having, whatever stuff, negative consequences in your personal life, things like that. You got to balance all this stuff. But yeah, very, very interesting that was something you really worked on. And again, glad you're better at it now. I still have some work to do myself, but anyway, so yeah, good.
It's always a work in progress.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, as you look back to, as you transitioned into the real estate side of it, what was one of your first victories that you had that really cemented the idea that this is achievable, I can do it? Was it the the first wholesale flip, the first house you built, or kind of what made it seem like it was an obvious path that you could pursue?
I think it's every time that I accomplish my goal, that's a new victory. And I can't really say that one is better than the other. It's just that's where I was in my career,
Right.
you know? So I think every step towards, and I think that's what everybody should do, right? Because because once you get comfortable, that's when you stop, right? That's when you stop putting forth more effort. So I think it's always important to have one or two things as a goal so that you can get to that victory, because it's an ongoing thing. It never stops. And if you do stop, then you're probably too comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the concepts or philosophies I learned a long time ago, and I try to always keep out there as that, number one, I always want constructive feedback. I always believe that there's something I can improve on in terms of how I execute, how I do, how I perform, how I interact, how I whatever. And then, again, you sort of take that concept of and you look at Kaizen, Japanese word for continuous improvement. I firmly believe and embrace that there's always something to kind of work on. There's always some incremental improvement that you can make, to ultimately drive better results. And I think it also dovetails into the concept of lifelong learning, which again, I always want to learn something new. I think that's what keeps you fresh. Like it keeps your brain healthy and just keeps you moving along. And again, there's always something you can work on to make it better, deliver better results. So
wholeheartedly, man, wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So Mike, maybe more recently in your real estate days, the wholesaling days, all the real estate things you're into in terms of, some of the different things you mentioned. Is there a humorous story, something happened to you recently?
I wouldn't say. It's all humorous, man. I guess humor to me is more sarcasm and, expectations that were not met. And, a lot of it comes from seller sides. I guess I would say it's just, speaking with sellers on a daily basis, it's to me, it's like a comedy. What they believe and kind of where the market is and things of that nature. So I guess a good story would be, I always go back to the shower head story, which is we were doing a deal. We'd called a seller, and most of the deals that we do and most offers we make, we don't need to see the property. We kind of already have underwritten for it. We can see what the cash flow is. And again, we're going to do a due diligence period anyway, right? So it's fine, right?
Right.
It just comes down to negotiation at that point, as far as a due diligence fee or, escrow deposit. Right. So, you take people's word, right? So, in that example that I just said, a seller had said, hey, the property is completely fine. It just needs a shower head. I was like, okay, shower, that's an interesting thing. So then we go to the property. And again, this is in Philadelphia. This is a bigger property. And we go in, and then the first floor is just framed out. Right. And then there's stairs that go up, there's carpeted steps, and there's like three, I'd say they were on drugs. Hard to say if they were actually on drugs, but they were just sitting there. And then there was another woman like sweeping the carpet, trying to make it clean. So then we go upstairs to the bathroom, and sure enough, it was missing a shower head. And I was like, and I look around and I go in the other room, and then there's like a bunch of junkies in there, like, doing what they're doing. And needless to say that, he was right. He just needed a shower head. But, stuff like that happens all the time where, you're trying to ascertain as much information on the front end. But then what you find is that, it just becomes like a sitcom. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're going into people's daily lives. So, that's funny to me all the time.
Yeah, that is funny. Actually, it reminds me of a story when I was in grad school, an economics class I took in grad school. The professor was a super guy, and he told a story of a woman who bought a new car, and he asked her, "Well, why'd you buy a new car?" He expected to hear, "Well, because I wanted the new features, I wanted X and Y and Z," and the reason she bought a new car is because the car needed new tires. So I'm like, okay, there you go.
Maybe changeable. I'm not sure. To dig into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, excellent.
Yes.
Well, where are you today on your journey? As you've, like I said, transitioned, you've evolved, you've taken on lots of different, aspects in the real estate. Kind of where are you today, and where's your, I guess, intent to go?
Yeah, so I recently moved, obviously moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and really just trying to build the network down here. It's definitely a different market, trying to wrap my head around it. So just trying to become an asset to people down here so that I can do that in any capacity possible. As far as, my day to day, I still do, I still represent clients in Philly. I still do a lot of wholesale deals, looking at underwriting, analyze bigger multifamily deals, looking to place capital. So, I mean, it's just basically the same. I guess the next tier for me falls maybe in line with what you guys do, where you're doing a lot of bigger deals. And I'm looking forward to that. But I think in tandem with that, I'm trying too hard to try to like make something here in Asheville, which may not just be a thing. Right. So I might be fighting an uphill battle, but I still feel like, building that network is important.
Absolutely. Yeah. We say that a lot on that show. I know too. I mean, that we don't think we're in the real estate business. We're in the relationship business, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to that. It's your network, who you know. I mean, that's how we find deals, how we find, other people to partner with. It's, the networks is huge, is critical in this. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, there's a cachet in a way about Asheville, something where people want to be there, and therefore the prices are higher than you would, maybe really want to deal with as a real estate investor. It doesn't mean there aren't deals out there. I mean, again, sure, there's not deals on the ground all over the place, but there's some there you may have to hunt from, and it may very well be that you have to go to surrounding counties and things like that in the general vicinity, but maybe not Asheville City, or maybe not Buncombe County itself. So, but yeah, again, you're right. The network is super critical, and obviously, we are huge believers in really continuing to always build your network as well. So, Mike, is there something that maybe through your business, maybe personally, maybe that you can mention that you do to give back in some way, in a way to help others? You talked about obviously networking and helping others, but at the same point in time, anything else you can mention?
I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, I try to spend, like I said, I have to prioritize my time. So I figure if I can spend an hour with somebody, because education is, let's be honest, education is very expensive. All right. It's very, very expensive, whether you pay for it from a traditional sense or you take it on as from an experience standpoint, right? Very expensive, right? One bad step can cost you millions, right? Especially if you're dealing with bigger deals.
Right.
And then the alternate side of that coin is to stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So even though I don't consider myself a giant, I do have some experience. So if I could spend an hour with somebody and at least hear them out and try to, course correct, I feel as if that little piece of information helps them, or at least saves them money, or, can prevent them from doing the wrong thing. And I truly believe, because that's the way that I learned. So me paying it forward on a daily basis and making sure that I do that, I truly believe that I'm giving back. And I think that it has so much power.
Yeah. Giving back in that respect, alone is huge. A lot of people were gracious with their time and ideas and thoughts for, Bill and I, as we were starting down the apartment route. And, again, that's part of why we do this, show, to help educate others and give back, as well as run 2 monthly meetings and, on and on and on. So it's definitely valuable to again, there's an expression, we found out who said this the other day, Bill, and I don't remember who was it. It was something to the effect of, people say learn from your mistakes. Well, I'd rather learn from the mistakes of others. And right. I think it kind of goes on to say that, listen, by doing so, by learning from mentors, by learning from people who are those giants, that you can go further, faster, and achieve. And again, you got to make mistakes along the way. That's how we learn. But at the same point in time, learn from others and try to avoid the big mistakes, and course correct along the way. So yeah, nice. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Mike, what's something you've recently implemented in your business that's allowed you to scale?
So we talked about, we didn't talk about it. We talked about it before the podcast, but so a lot of my time was eaten up by, back office paperwork, because, when you're dealing on multiple levels and transactions, there's lots of paperwork, let's be honest. So one of the things that I had done was I actually hired them and trained them, were VAs. And I think that has helped me, spend less time on tedious paperwork and affording me more time to focus on getting deals done and underwriting things so that we can create an income. And that in itself is, I can't tell you how much time that I can spend, even if I wanted to do free time, even if it wasn't towards business. I wanted to go play golf or something. You know what I mean? It's worth it hand over fist. So that is one thing that I've implemented. I had it before, but it wasn't going well. My experience wasn't as I thought it would be. So then I kind of just took the reins and said, this is a great idea. I just have to be able to systematize it in a way that I don't have to consistently be overseeing it, because that's the whole, what's the point of that, right? So that in itself, I took on an entrepreneur who wanted to start a VA company, and I trained them, and then they kind of were able to create the systems, hire the people, vet them, and now we have our own team. So that's been
nice,
very helpful.
Nice.
Yeah. So once you train them on all your systems and procedures and everything, they kind of can run autonomously there, and then like once a day they check in or send you files as needed, and kind of streamlines the workload for you.
Yes,
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we had an HR specialist on at one point, Nicole, I believe. I don't remember which episode that was, but she mentioned the concept of I don't remember what the front end was, but I think it was something along the lines of hire fast, but it might not have been hire fast, but it was definitely fire fast. A lot of people make the mistake of hanging on to somebody much longer than they should. And obviously in the VA side, obviously you got to give them structure to be able to create and be productive. But at the same point in time, if it's not working, you need to take action to change that up. So good, nice.
I think what you're referring to is you hire slow and you fire fast.
There you go.
And I use that same mentality when placing tenants, because I learned the hard way that it's a lot easier to spend 3 months getting the right tenant than 6 months trying to get the wrong tenant out.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And again, we see that in some places we will absolutely not invest because of that situation where it takes forever to get somebody out. Even in there's one particular county in Georgia that's notorious for being very slow to evict, which again is just not okay. I'm sorry, you have eviction laws on the books, and we're going to be fair as a landlord, but at the same point in time, the resident has to be fair and honor their commitment too. And if they don't meet their end of the contract, which is to pay their rent, well, then there's consequences. And anyway, so but good. Yeah, I like that. Again, hire slow, fire fast. Yeah. And you're right. That's so much it applies to residents. If you do not properly vet your resident, it's going to bite you. So
it will.
Yeah.
I had a crash course in that. So a lot of my first single family properties were, so one of my mentors was a gentleman who focused on, D-class low income and leveraged, the voucher program, which is essentially what used to be called the Section 8 program. I guess it kind of still is, but they want to give it a better name, right? So most of my experience came from that. Which enabled me now to understand the gravity of getting people in and out. And although the voucher program tends to kind of leverage that, because you'll still get your money, but the quality of your unit after the fact, you might be just rehabbing a whole house at that point. So I definitely took a crash course in that when I first started.
Yeah, exactly. So Michael, is there what advice would you give to somebody who's considering making a path change?
Path change. I would say, so I had this conversation a lot with a lot of individuals that, colleagues, et cetera, because most people are scared to take the jump. So I guess from a practical standpoint, make sure that your bases are covered, your living expenses are covered before you make any big jumps. I am the person that says go big, but I'm also logical in that sense. And I tend to be pretty conservative from a financial standpoint. So I say the best advice is before you make that path change, do it in tandem with your W-2 job, right? It's okay to do both, and make sure that before you go full in to whatever that new, I guess I'm talking more from a real estate perspective. So, make sure that you can cover your living expenses. And as soon as you can, or at least close, then first of all, it's an indication that you know what you're doing, right? And then second of all, if you use the same passion that you used and you really truly love real estate, you're gonna hit home runs all the time.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay.
Great.
Yeah, I went back and looked. It was show 47, Nicole Anderson, who was the HR person I mentioned. Again, great show. So encourage everybody to listen, and good stuff. Yeah.
Well, Mike, what's the best way for our listeners to reach you and learn more about what projects you're working on?
Yeah. So I have a couple different entities, so it really depends on what type of avenue they're looking for. Mm-hmm. But I do have. If you want, you'll just put my email in the show notes and my phone number. That's probably the best way, because there's a couple ways to skin a cat and help people in whatever direction they're looking to do.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Well, go ahead. Sorry, Mark. Bill, go ahead and mention it. Again, if wholesaling X, if VA, then maybe contact you this way, or website, whatever.
You want me to tell? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and mention it. Sure.
So from a wholesaling perspective, my marketing company is REI Dynasty. It's just reidynasty.com. You can join the buyers list. We're in 12 different markets right now. There's also an option on there that if you want to be a passive investor, you can, there's an option there. And then we have a follow-up process for that. From a development standpoint, AVL Homes is a company that I just started out here to try to create some stimulation here in the Asheville market. My main company back in Philly is Property Kings. So that's propertykings.com. So any of those sites, you're more than welcome to visit and reach out to me, and I can do what I can to help you in real estate in any direction.
Great. And we'll add those to the show notes below there, Mike. Well, Mike, really appreciate you being on the Road Less Traveled show today. Really enjoyed the conversation and want to wish you continued success in your future.
I appreciate you guys. I really do. If there's anything I can do for you guys personally or in the business world, please let me know. I'm an open book, so I'll try to help out any way I can. And if you can help me, I'd greatly appreciate that as well.
Definitely.
Thanks, Mike.
We want to thank you, Michael, for being on. We also want to thank our listeners. Please continue to give us a 5-star rating so we can bring you more great content like our show today with Michael Smith. And we also want to remind everybody of a couple of important things that Park Capital Partners has going, which is, first of all, we have the Park Capital Partners Value Add Fund, which is a 506c fund open today to accredited investors. Second, we have the Park Capital Partners Foundation, which is a 501(c) nonprofit that Bill and I created as another way that we give back. The way that works quickly is that, first of all, Bill and I fund the operations of that foundation. So all the work donated to the foundation goes to do its best work, which is to help others. Second, we donate personally. Third, we donate corporately. And finally, when investors invest with us, we make a donation to the charity of their choice from a list of 15 different charities as a way that the investors can also, make returns, but at the same point in time, feel good about doing it in terms of helping somebody else along the way. So please reach out to Bill and myself. We're happy to talk with you anytime. Happy to have a conversation. Our website is parkcapitalpartnersllc.com, parkcapitalpartnersllc.com. And thanks again folks for joining. Remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action. Thanks for joining.